Welcome to today's class of tissues, in which we are going to read about animal tissue. So far we have completed the plant tissue, and we have in the starting introduction of the tissue chapter came to know that the plant tissue and the animal tissues are quite different from each other. In case of plants, since they are fixed in one place, mostly the tissues in case of plants are mechanical tissues, giving them strength to withstand the environmental stressful conditions. And also there are certain tissues which are associated with the growth of the plant, and there are some tissues which are associated with the conduction and transportation. But unlike the plant tissues, the animal tissues are quite varied in nature. The reason is because the multicellular organism, which shows the tissue level organization, organ or organ system level organization, in them a specific tissue is specified to do a particular work. A single tissue is not capable of doing all the work. So here there is a division of labor. And if we talk about animal, shows a lot of movement, a lot of locomotion, then the various kinds of metabolic activities happening inside the body also needs a perfect transportation system. So depending upon that, the animal tissues are broadly classified into 4 types. Now what are these things? Epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscular tissue and nervous tissue. Now epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscular tissue and nervous tissue. From the name first we will try to understand what are the 4 different types of animal tissue. See, it's not so difficult. The spelling, maybe it is new for you, so that's why it is a little bit difficult for you to mug up or to keep it in your mind. But try to think that these are your 4 friends. So if these are your 4 friends, so definitely the friend's name you have to mug up to become good friends with them. So the first friend of yours, his name is epithelial, epithelial tissue. The next friend of yours is connective tissue. The third friend is muscular tissue, and the 4th friend is your nervous tissue. So these are your 4 new friends added to your class. Okay, so this way you try to remember their names. Now this epithelial tissue, this word epi, E-P-I, have you ever got this word before? I hope you remember that in plant tissue we have read about epidermis. If you remember, we have read about epiblema. So what were those epidermis and epiblema? The epidermis was the tissue which was covering the other internal plant tissues, isn't it? And it was protecting the internal tissues of the plant. Similarly, epiblema was the tissue which was found around the root, because it was provided with unicellular root hair cells. So that is why it was named as your epiblema. Okay, so anything which is epi means outer. Okay, so outer covering tissues. Okay, these will come under this epithelial tissue. So what are epithelial tissues? These are the covering tissues. Now where are they found? Definitely they will be found on the outer part of the body as well as the inner part of the body. Outer part, if we talk about our skin is also made up of epithelial tissue. But these epithelial tissues further are classified. We will come to that. But for time being, you see, if the epithelial tissue which we are talking about, it is mainly meant for secretion, for diffusion of substances, for excretion purpose. So those are the various functions of the epithelial tissues. Now these epithelial tissues, if they are single layered present in our skin, so then what will happen? It won't be able to withstand the wear and tear which the body is every day facing. You just for some reason you fall down, so there will be bruises in your skin, isn't it? That means there will be some kind of injuries in your skin. So if your skin layer is just made up of a single layer, then that will do what? That will be immediately ruptured and the blood will be oozing out. But it oozes out not so easily, isn't it? The reason is because the skin is made up of layer of tissues. So since it is made up of layer of tissues, so layer is what? You remember we have read it in class 7 about the various, the earth when it is cut into a section, then there were various layers or strata of the earth. Remember, A horizon, B horizon, C horizon, bedrocks were there. So there were stratas. Stratas means layers. So similarly, our skin is also made up of layers. So since it is made up of strata or layers, that is why the epithelial tissue with which our skin is made up of, it is known as your stratified epithelial tissue. Stratified means in layer, multi-layered structure. Okay. So epithelial tissue, covering tissue, where are they found? One example I told you, in our skin. Next examples, wherever we have cavity in our body. Cavity means what? Cavity is a kind of, empty thing which has to be lined actually. If it is not lined, then the blood capillaries will be exposed. The various other tissues will be exposed. So if you see inside your mouth, if you open your mouth and see it inside the mirror, if you have in your dressing table, go near it and just open your mouth and see, you will find there the inner surface of your mouth is also lined by a thin layer of tissue. Now that is also epithelial tissue. Now that is very thin, very gentle. Sometimes you see when you're chewing your food and you just bite your inner cheek, immediately blood oozes out, isn't it? Because there the layer of the epithelial tissue is very less, a single layer epithelial tissue or maybe 2 or 3 layered epithelial tissue. So that is called the squamous epithelial tissue. So where the diffusion of substance can take place. Saliva can come out, secretions can take place, diffusion of substances can take place. If you talk about your blood vessels, the inner surface of the blood vessels, whether it is artery, whether it is vein, whether it is capillaries, it also has to be inside, lined, isn't it? When the blood will be flowing through it, it should be properly, cemented or covered inside. So that is also done by the help of this squamous epithelial cell, and it is single layer, so that diffusion of oxygen and carbon dioxide can take place through those blood capillaries. Okay, so wherever this things has to be diffused or filtered, rather, their filtration wherever it is required, that is, something is to be filtered by the layers. So there plays the role of your squamous epithelial tissue. So epithelial tissues present inside the cavities. Inside our nose also cavity is there, isn't it? So that cavity also is lined by a layer of cells or layer of tissues. That is also the kind of epithelial tissue. But inside your nose, hair is there, small fine hair is there. What does the hair do? Hair prevents the entry of the germs and the dust particles into our trachea or into our nasal cavity and all. So since they are provided with hair-like structures, those tissues are provided with hair-like structures, so they have a special name. It is not mentioned here, but they are a part of cuboidal tissues and they form the ciliated epithelial tissue. They are provided with cilia. When it is cilia means hair-like structures. So where are they present? In our bronchus they are present, in our trachea, that is a windpipe, it is present, in our nose it is present. In case of the female reproductive part, 2 fallopian tubes are there. Now in the fallopian tubes, when the egg is released, the egg travels through the fallopian tube, isn't it? Because if the egg does not travel through the fallopian tube, the sperm will not be able to fertilize it, isn't it? If it is supposed stagnant, the egg is not moving, so the sperm is not finding the egg, so no fertilization. So as a result, there will be no formation of zygote, isn't it? So the cilia present in the oviduct or the fallopian tube helps to move the egg forward, that is the ovum forward, so that when the sperm meets the mature ovum, fertilization can take place. So these are the various locations where we can find the ciliated epithelial tissues, okay, in our respiratory tract, in the oviduct. So these are the places where the ciliated epithelial tissues are found. Then the epithelial tissues are also associated with secretions. I told you secretions where in our small intestine, intestinal juices are secreted. Then in our stomach, gastric juice is secreted, HCl is secreted. Then there are various other places like salivary glands are present in our 2 sides of our lower jaw, below our ears. So those are the places from where the secretion will take place. So they have a specialized epithelial tissue which is called as your glandular epithelial tissue. Now these glandular epithelial tissues are either cuboidal in nature or they are columnar in nature. What is the basic difference between this cuboidal and columnar? See, I have drawn it here. You can see it closely to understand. So if we look closer to any kind of epithelial tissue, you see I have drawn it with green in the base. Can you see this everywhere? This green color, green color, green color. And over that I have drawn the cells. Now these cells are quite broad. You can see these are having a proper nucleus, and in between the cell there is no intercellular space. In case of any kind of epithelial tissues, they are compactly arranged so that there is no gap. There is cementing material which is actually making it compact. And this membrane over which these cells are compactly arranged, this green color membrane, this green color membrane, this one is called as your, okay, let me write it with this one will be called as your basement membrane. Okay, this is called as your basement membrane. Okay, so like this, basement membrane is here also, basement membrane is here also, basement membrane is here also. But you can see the shape of the cells are different. Here the shape of the cells are quite, polygonal type, whereas if you see in case of this, the shape is like a cube. Okay, and so closely they are arranged. And here you can see that the shape of the cells are like that of column. They are so long, like pillars. So this is the basic difference. And here you can see that the nucleus is towards the base of each column, and here the nucleus is central. So that is also the difference between cuboidal and columnar. These are compactly, these are thick. So definitely they are going to, present in the places where there is protection is required of the body cells, the inner lying body cells. And these are of course associated with the absorptions. These are found in the intestine, in the small intestine, where the absorption of the substances takes place. In the small intestine there is villi. So villi is like this, the shape of the villi is like this. So inside this villi, these columnar epithelial cells are there, which can easily, absorb the simplified food substances like the glucose, like the amino acids, the lipids, etc. And sometimes it has been noticed that this cuboidal epithelial tissue or the columnar epithelial tissues are also associated with certain glands. That means they secrete certain substances, like I told you that they are present when these cuboidal epithelial tissues are found in the salivary gland. They are associated with the secretion of saliva, which helps in the process of digestion. Similarly, if you go to the small intestine, intestinal juices are secreted, which is again, important for the digestion of the various complex food substances. Similarly, if you go to the kidney tubules, if you go to the thyroid gland, in case of thyroid gland, they are associated with the secretion. This cuboidal epithelial tissues are associated with the secretion of your hormones. So when you talk about the secretion portions, secretions will be either in the form of hormones or they will be in the form of your enzymes. So sometimes the epithelial tissues are also associated with secretions. Secretions of what? Secretions of hormones or secretions of enzymes. Okay, so not only they are giving protection to the inner lying body parts, but also they are associated with the secretion of hormones and the secretion of enzymes. And when sometimes this tissues which are column like or pillar like, they are associated with some hairy structures over them. So we call them as your ciliated epithelial tissues. And this ciliated epithelial tissues, I told you that they are found in our nasal tract, they are found in the oviduct, they are found in the respiratory tract. They help in filtering the substances. Sometimes they help in the movement of the substance, like we have seen in case of the ovum traveling further. It requires the support of the cilia, because cilia will propel the ovum to move forward into the fallopian tube. And stratified epithelial tissue, you can see it's multi-layered, isn't it? So many layers are there. It's a strata. So when it is so thick, in that case definitely it is associated with the protection It is present in the skin, I told you, and sometimes the outermost layer of this stratified epithelial tissue is provided with a special protein. The name of that protein is known as your keratin. Okay, it is called as your keratin. Now, the function, what is the function of this keratin? This keratin is you can say water impermeable layer, which is elastic in nature, and which is not allowing the water substance to stay over the skin. So it makes it more flexible, it makes it more impermeable to other outside substances. So that is why it is also sometimes named as your keratinized stratified epithelial tissues. Okay, but as far as your NCERT goes, in your NCERT you have only these 4 types of epithelial tissue: squamous epithelial tissue, cuboidal epithelial tissue, columnar epithelial tissue, and stratified epithelial tissue. Squamous, where are they found? I told you they are found in the inner linings of our body, like in the blood vessels. They are present inside the mouth cavity. Sometimes the squamous epithelial tissue also helps in the partition of the internal organs. Internal organs also need some partitions, isn't it? Because compartmentalization is required, or else all the internal organs will be messed up. So they help in doing that, and they are generally single layered. They help in the process of diffusion of substances, because gaseous diffusion can take place through single layered the squamous epithelial cells. Then filtration can take place. That's the reason why they are single layered, and they all kind of epithelial tissues are found over a solid base, and that base is called as your basement membrane, over which these cells are arranged. These are highly compact. Anywhere you go, all are highly compact with a prominent nucleus, and there is cementing materials between each one of them. Cuboidal epithelial tissues, I told you they are found in the parts like that of your salivary glands. They are found in the kidney tubules, sweat glands, and they are associated with the secretions of, I told you, hormones and enzymes in our body. And columnar epithelial tissues, I told you, they are found in the small intestine wall, they are found in the stomach wall, they are found with that of your colon, that is the large intestine, and they are pillar like, compactly arranged. They are associated with the secretions also, and they are associated with giving protection also. And stratified, of course, they are found in the outer part of our body, especially the skin, and they are sometimes keratinized. So that is why they are known as your keratinized stratified epithelial tissue. And columnar tissues, when they are provided with some kinds of hairy projections, they are called as your ciliated epithelial tissue. Even cuboidal tissues also sometimes form the cilia. And sometimes it is being noticed that suppose if this is a cell, this is a epithelial cell, so invagination of the epithelial cell takes place, and here some secretory substances are produced, so that they can produce any kind of secretions into the surroundings, which can be hormones or which can be enzymes. So since they are provided with some glands, so they are known as your glandular epithelial tissues. So either cuboidal or columnar tissues, when forms this kind of structure inside their cell, so that they can release hormones or enzymes, then they have a special name. These are called as your glandular epithelial tissues. So basically 4 types of epithelial tissue: squamous, cuboidal, columnar, and stratified. When the cuboidal or the columnar are provided with glands, then they are named as your glandular epithelial tissue. When the cuboidal or columnar tissues are provided with these hairy projections, then they are called as your ciliated epithelial tissues. And the last one is your stratified epithelial tissue, which is in the form of strata, thick layer, so that the internal body parts can be protected. So this is about the 4 different types of epithelial tissues discussed in your book, with the characteristic features, functions, and their locations. So that was all about the different types of epithelial tissues, which is the first kind of animal tissues which we have discussed today. Next we will move on to the connective tissue, followed by muscular tissue and nervous tissue. Whatever is being discussed today, go through your book, NCERT book, and practice the diagram along with the things which I have mentioned, and then we can smoothly take upon the next topic, that is the connective tissue.